Is it better to correct your weaknesses or reinforce your natural talents? And here's one or two more I'll just let you read real quickly. Sometimes you see people make these claims, and it's just somebody who did a little PhD dissertation. They went out and sampled 5 or 10 people, and they said, oh, this sounds like a good idea. They got their PhD on it. They developed a little training program around it, and all of a sudden you have Myers-Briggs or some other thing like that.
That wasn't Weidner work.
I like to get a little laugh and a little poke back on it. This research was funded by the Gallup poll. 2.1 million interviews over 30 years resulted in the kinds of conclusions they're coming to. That is credible, incredible amounts of research. This is very powerful stuff. And in a nutshell, it says, and in fact, reading some of the what would you call it? The development of the brain. As a little child, even pre-birth, up through the first 5 or 10, maybe up to about 15 years old, it's just an amazing understanding of what's going on in the brain. We think about all the energy going to a child in its growth spurts, but the energy going into increasing that brain capacity dwarfs the muscles and bones that are being added to the child. But what it brings out is that during those early years, you're building all these synapse connections, and you're also letting some kind of atrophy. And by the time you're 10 or 15 years old, you have pretty much set for yourself the things that are really your basic talents. So the word strengths is a superset of some other things. And the talents is what they focus on here. And they have uncovered 34 different talents. And they say most people have 6 or 8 that are really a predominant part of what they are. And there's some that they absolutely have a distaste for. And you know what they are. You haven't verbalized it. But you know there's been some things. Sometimes you've had a job and you say, well, yeah, I just don't like this job. I don't know what it is. I just don't like this job. And other times you've run across somebody and said, oh, I really love doing this. You couldn't put words around it. You can't explain exactly what it is, but it's those basic talents. It's your propensities to be a certain way or another. Some people are naturally inquisitive. You can see it from earliest childhood. What's an inquisitive child? They take some electronic device, they unscrew it, take it all apart, look at it, put it back together again. They become inventors. It's that natural inquisitiveness. If they have inquisitiveness and they're taught accounting skills, they might become a forensic accountant or CPA. If they don't get the skills, they'll just have an inquisitive nature and they'll never be able to mature it into anything. So it takes 2 things. It takes these inherent talents and then supporting them with the skills and competencies. So an inquisitive person that doesn't know anything about electronics is highly unlikely not to invent some great electronic stuff. But if you give them the knowledge about electronics and they're basically inquisitive, you might end up with a Thomas Edison. Very powerful book. I strongly recommend you get into it. I think personal KM starts off with you yourself, getting your own act in order, and it's more than just changing the directory on your PC to have that well organized. It's getting your personal act together. If you understand where your real talents lie and focus on building the strengths around them, I think you're going to be a super achiever compared to what you would have been otherwise. Okay, so I think that's critically important, and that would be a strong recommendation. People that come to meetings like this like to take away a couple of takeaways. That book is a takeaway. Okay? And if you want the 34 talents summarized on, as I give to my students, a nice little 2 or 3 pages so you can read it and not have to spend 50 hours reading the whole book, just send me an email. I'll be happy to send you my own little notes on it. And it's not enough to make you expert on it, but it'll give you a next level up of what this is all about. All right, let's talk about KM for a second. This doesn't need the sound. I couldn't get the sound hooked up. It's pretty self-explanatory. Some of you may have seen this already. KM may not be what you expect. KM may not be what you expect. KM may not be what you expect. We've claimed that most knowledge is tacit. We don't have to get into that conversation right now. I'm sure you all agree most knowledge is tacit. It's in people's heads. Do you know what this very pretty lady from Singapore inside her head looks like? That. If we're going to do KM, That means we got to get working on those neurons and synapses and all that stuff. In fact, if I was your knowledge manager in this organization, I would say, first of all, can we manage knowledge? Can we get in there and do that? Well, here's what I'd be asking you. Leanna, how's your endoplasmic reticulum this morning? Have you been exercising your dendrites like I told you? That's knowledge management, right? Because that's where knowledge is housed in our brain cells and all those synapses and connections. Well, obviously we can't. Your organization can't manage knowledge because most knowledge is in people's heads. So we have other ways we talk about doing knowledge management from an organizational level. I don't even want to tell you where this came from. I was in Kuwait, and I picked up a little virus that pops every 2 hours on the... So excuse me for that.
You picked up the virus or the computer?
My computer picked up the virus. And the amazing thing is, I was staying with a host, and you sign on in their house in Kuwait, and you get this big screen that says, for your protection, big orange screen, we have decided, you know, social values or whatever. I mean, it's a nice little statement, and I say, oh, this is good. Back home, I have all these firewalls and everything. Here I got the firewall. And the first time in my life, I've had a virus that crept through there. So I'm going to get a new machine, because I can't get rid of it. The organization cannot manage knowledge. It cannot get into your head. But you personally can manage your own knowledge. So I think knowledge management is a misnomer when applied to the large organization. I think creating a learning organization or some other terminology is probably more suitable. But let's not fight a fight about that. Let's not try to change its name. We're calling it KM. We'll live with it.